welcome to the podcast. Picture this. It's 1984. You're standing in a massive echoing train station in Barcelona, Spain.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And the crowds are just, it's just a blur of briefcases and luggage, right?
Yeah.
Trains are roaring in and out. Announcements are blaring over the loudspeakers.
It's total sensory overload.
Exactly. Total chaos. And right there, completely swallowed up by the movement of thousands of commuters, are three young kids, siblings.
Oh, wow.
Just standing there, holding on to each other, waiting for parents who are, they're never coming back.
God, it's an image that just immediately drops your stomach.
Yeah.
You try to imagine the sheer panic for a child in that environment. I mean, the anxiety setting in as minutes just turn into hours.
Right, and it's the inciting incident for a staggering true story. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the 4-part Hulu docuseries Abandon, which it just dropped on July 1st.
It did, yeah.
And to really get into the psychological meat of this, we are using an incredible piece of source material called The Silent Threads of Identity and Belonging. Because this deep dive isn't just a TV review for you listening.
No.
We are looking at what happened after that train station. Because those three kids, they didn't get a neat Hollywood rescue where they, all stayed together.
Right. They really didn't. They were scooped up by the system, entirely separated from one another, and then adopted out to completely different families.
Unbelievable.
And for decades, they were raised completely in the dark about their true origins.
Yes.
Just entirely disconnected from the only other people on Earth who actually experienced that day with them.
It's just devastating. And decades later, as adults, they begin this massive search for their biological parents and really the truth of what actually happened.
Yeah, the missing pieces of themselves, essentially.
Now, before we get into the heavy psychological realities of that, okay, let's unpack this stylistic choice the filmmakers made.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Because we consume a lot of media about old, cold cases.
We do. I mean, the true crime machine is just a massive part of our culture right now.
And we know the formula. You get the blurry slow-motion reenactments, the spooky synthesizer music.
With dramatic voiceovers.
Yes. The narrator asking, but who really did it? Right before it cuts to a mattress commercial. We're conditioned to treat these shows like a fun game of Clue.
We really are.
We sit on our couches playing armchair detective, treating the clues like a crossword puzzle. But Abandon completely subverts that. The source material points out that it relies entirely on, quote, necessity over sensationalism.
Exactly. I mean, there is no serial killer here. There's no massive shadow government conspiracy. The suspense doesn't come from a ticking clock.
Right.
It comes from a much more primal fear, which is the terrifying uncertainty of your own identity. Who were their parents? Why were they left behind?
What happened in those hours before they were found?
Right. Because these siblings aren't acting as detectives. They are simply people trying to understand their own lives.
Yeah. But let me push back on that for a second. If you strip away the ticking clock, the villain, the traditional thriller stakes, doesn't a documentary risk becoming, a little slow?
I get why you'd ask that.
Like, how do you keep an audience hooked for 4 hours without those built-in dramatic hooks?
Because the emotional stakes are just so much higher than any artificial thriller stakes could ever be.
Yeah.
In a standard procedural, a dead end is just, frustrating for the detective.
Sure.
But when these siblings hit a dead end, it is an existential threat. The reason you can't look away is because every single unanswered question isn't a plot point to them. It is a literal wound.
Oh, wow. A wound, meaning it's actually hurting them right now, in the present.
Exactly. Think about how the human brain processes narrative. We are wired to need a beginning, a middle, and an end to our own lives.
Right, a complete story.
Yeah. So when your beginning is a void, your brain essentially gets stuck in a loop trying to solve the threat of the unknown. So when you watch this docuseries, you aren't watching to see if they catch a bad guy.
You're watching a psychological survival story.
Exactly. You're watching people try to heal a fracture in their own foundation before it completely collapses.
That makes total sense. Finding out their actual birth name carries the exact same adrenaline spike as finding a murder weapon in a standard thriller.
Because it's a matter of psychological life and death for them.
Man. And that search for the missing pieces naturally forces a confrontation with the pieces they do have, right? It forces them to examine the reality of their upbringing.
Which brings us into a really complex area.
It does. It brings us right into the incredibly thorny reality of adoption. Because these kids were given loving homes, they were given stability and opportunity.
Right, they were saved. in a sense.
But the societal narrative we have built around adoption is usually incredibly one-dimensional. Traditional narratives focus so heavily on gratitude, new beginnings, the concept of being chosen.
Lucky child syndrome.
Yes, the expectation that because you were rescued and given a good home, your only acceptable emotion is pure, unadulterated gratitude.
What's fascinating here is how honestly the series dismantles that. It doesn't offer adoption as a simple solution or a simple loss. It addresses a psychological concept known as ambiguous loss.
Wait, ambiguous loss. Tell me how that works.
So, ambiguous loss occurs when there is no real closure. In traditional grief, someone passes away, there's a funeral, and the brain can process the finality of it.
Right, there's a definite endpoint.
But for these siblings, their biological parents in their previous lives didn't die. They just vanished. So as children sitting at a lovely dinner table with a wonderful adoptive family, their nervous systems are still subconsciously scanning for the people they lost.
And society says, hey, stop standing. You have a nice dinner table now. Be thankful.
Right. Society demands a simple story, a rescue mission with a happy ending. But Abandon shows us the honest mechanism of adoption. It is simultaneously a profound gift and a profound fracture.
A gift and a fracture, that is such a heavy duality.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because, yes, these siblings were given stability, but to get that, they lost their cultural roots, they lost their genetic mirrors, and most tragically, they lost each other.
I see this a lot, actually. People reacting to stories like this by saying, well, they got a better life out of it. Why dig up the past?
Well, people say that all the time.
And I have to push back on that expectation, because it completely ignores how human attachment works. You don't just overwrite a child's hard drive and start fresh.
It absolutely cannot. The body keeps the score. The implicit memories of that train station, the sensory details of being left.
The sudden disappearance of a brother or sister.
Exactly. Those things don't just evaporate because a new set of parents are kind. And the docuseries does a brilliant job of highlighting these invisible burdens people can carry even in the most loving homes.
Which is such a massive breath of fresh air.
It really is validating.
It is. For you listening right now, if you have firsthand experience with the foster system, or family separation, or adoption, you know how rare it is to see this duality portrayed with such care.
Right, because belonging can be deeply real.
Yeah.
And yet simultaneously incomplete.
Yes. You don't have to be the broken, tragic victim, and you don't have to be the eternally grateful, perfect child. You can just be a complex human.
It gives permission to hold two conflicting truths at the exact same time.
And that grief really comes to a head when we see them finally reunite. So from the fractured, isolated realities of their individual upbringings, we pivot to this incredible dynamic when they finally get in the same room.
It's a powerful moment.
So powerful. I mean, picture this. You have three adults. They haven't seen each other since they were tiny kids in 1984. They have been shaped by entirely different environments.
Different values, different routines.
Completely different families. And yet, the source material notes that when they finally reconnect, there is this undeniable bond.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really challenges everything we assume about what makes a family. We tend to think family is either exclusively biological or exclusively adoptive.
Right. It's either nature or nurture.
Exactly. But the docuseries proves that family is not exclusively either of those things. It is emotional, it's experiential, and it is actively chosen.
I love that. Experiential.
Yeah, because their connection isn't defined by the decades they lost. It's defined by the courage they demonstrate in reclaiming their story together.
They share some biology, sure, but they have zero shared nurture.
None.
What binds them is that shared past. It serves as a bridge between their vastly different present lives. They are the only three people on the planet who know what the air felt like in that train station.
Right, and their shared determination to find the truth becomes the engine of the narrative. Their unity actually becomes a profound form of healing.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me, just from a filmmaking perspective. The source material makes a point to highlight the cinematography here.
Yes, the visual choices are so deliberate.
Very deliberate. It says it intentionally emphasizes intimacy rather than spectacle, and you feel it. The pacing gives viewers space to reflect. There are these long, quiet takes.
No fast cuts telling you where to look.
Right. No manipulative music swelling to make you cry. But I have to ask you, when a docuseries makes visual choices like that, removing all those traditional tools of emotional manipulation, how does that fundamentally alter our understanding of trauma and resilience?
It's a great question because we are so used to being spoon-fed emotion by directors. But from a psychological standpoint, Taking away the music and the fast cuts actually demands more empathy.
Really? How so?
Well, when a documentary uses flashy editing or swelling music to highlight someone's pain, the viewer's brain often recognizes it as a performance. We look at the subject from the outside in as a spectacle.
Okay, I can see that. We feel pity, maybe.
Right, pity. But when the camera just holds still, when it forces you to sit in silence while these siblings process their reunion, your brain stops being a spectator. You start to physically feel the weight of their silence.
That makes so much sense. It shifts from pity, oh, look at those poor people, to true empathy. I am sitting in this heavy, uncomfortable reality with you.
Exactly. Trauma, in the long term, is rarely loud and dramatic. Usually, it's incredibly quiet. By matching that quietness visually, the director isn't just showing us their pain, they are showing us their dignity.
It honors their experience, and honestly, it demands a lot more from us as viewers. Which brings us to the crux of why we are even doing this deep dive today.
Right? The broader takeaway.
Exactly. Having explored the siblings' specific journey, we need to talk about why this matters to you, the listener. Because it's easy to say, wow, what a crazy story about 3 people in Spain, and then just move on with your day.
But you can't just move on.
No, even if you have absolutely no personal connection to adoption or abandonment, this narrative still applies to you because the series taps into a universal human desire.
The need to understand who we are and where we come from.
Right. Identity isn't just a name or a birthplace, right? It is a story.
It is entirely a story.
And when that story has missing chapters, the absence literally becomes a part of us. The blank spaces actively shape the rest of the book.
This raises an important question about empathy, really. The series demands empathy not just for the siblings on screen, but for anyone whose life began with unanswered questions.
Because the siblings' journey mirrors private questions we all ask ourselves, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Questions like, what shaped me? What parts of my past still influence me?
What do I need to know to feel whole?
Exactly. And it also prompts some critical thinking about the systems around us. Systems like social services that shape children's lives.
Yeah, how they handle vulnerable lives. You look at a system in 1984 that separated them and sort of just expected them to move on.
Right. It forces us to look at the long-term impacts of childhood separation and the ethics of memory. We have this dangerous myth that children are just inherently resilient, that if you don't talk about the bad things, they'll just bounce back.
The clean slate theory.
Exactly. But this docuseries completely shatters that. It proves that you can't just mandate resilience by enforcing silence.
So what does this all mean? For you, listening right now, I want to challenge you to reflect on your own history.
The known, the unknown, and the unspoken.
Exactly. Think about the known events in your timeline that shaped you, but more importantly, think about the unknown factors. Do you view your own identity as a fixed trait or as something that is continually discovered?
Because as this docuseries shows us, those missing chapters are where the truth actually lives.
To wrap up our deep dive today, it is incredibly clear that Abandoned is so much more than a mystery. It's a masterclass in empathy.
It really is.
And it's an absolute celebration of human connection that survives distance, time, and silence. It really stands out in a world of shock value by honoring the painful power of truth.
It proves that the human drive to find our people is virtually unstoppable.
Unstoppable. The source material notes that the past is never truly gone. It waits quietly until we are ready to face it. It tells us that the missing chapters of our story actually become part of us.
They absolutely do.
And building on that, we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. If our identities are stories built upon the known and unknown events of our past, what happens to the generations that follow us when we choose to leave our own painful chapters unspoken? Does our protective silence today become the very missing puzzle piece that fractures someone else's identity tomorrow?